Can you imagine a country in the world in which you least need to get involved? I mean, it is completely demented. Just leave it alone.
Exactly.
But I think we should never lose sight of the human tragedy at the centre of it all, on both sides.
Still going on, Ms.
Absolutely. And we focus on, of course, Gaddafi is determined to put down the rebellion by all necessary means, but the West is equally determined to kill other people. Civil wars cannot be won unless people kill each other. And that's what's happening.
I don't think necessarily the West wants to kill all the people in that sense.
Yeah,
but as long as they're allied with the rebels who have themselves essentially ruled out any kind of diplomatic solution, that's the direction that we're tending.
We cited something about these cluster weapons, which is on the news today. I mean, the leader of the British Army goes on the television to deplore them. I mean, we dropped cluster weapons on Niš in Serbia during the Kosovo War.
But
we
also,
use these weapons.
And this idea that the warplane coalitions are dropping nice, sweet, little missiles.
Good weapons as opposed to bad weapons. But just a couple of minutes I've got left, I just wanted to return to NATO itself, because we are seeing yet again, if the Americans don't do it, nobody does it. So you can't live with them, you can't live without them. There's part of that. And also that the European nations, again, or at least Britain and France, are talking tough, but actually have they got the capability to do what they're supposed to do or what they want to do? And the answer is possibly no. And it certainly shows that the U.S. is always in a tight spot, because it's accused of being unilateral when it does want to go out front and lead, and then when it actually pulls back, then it's talked about as being too pusillanimous, and where is it? I mean, I think that unless you actually have a united command within NATO, a quarter of countries actually doing airstrikes doesn't show that it's any kind of alliance whatsoever. I mean, then you really sort of have to question how they're going to keep on through
and there's a strong
weeks.
streak within NATO now which is pushing for negotiations, and I think that's the way forward.
OK, let's move on. Because many people in Britain agreed with the senior Labour politician Jack Straw when he said he felt very uncomfortable meeting Muslim women who covered their faces completely. But here, beyond a lively debate, there were no plans to make such a covering illegal. But in France, the burqa and similar kinds of dress were seen by some as striking at the very heart of a secular republic. So what do we make of the burqa ban? You've been writing about it this week. You're French-Algerian, so you understand this intimately. What do you make of it?
Well, first of all, it's not contradictory at all, with a woman wearing a burqa and the secular nature of French society. Secularism doesn't suppress religion, quite the opposite. It allows freedom of expression, the expression of religious belief, and its respect of all beliefs. So, saying that the full veil is an attack on the secular nature of society is very disingenuous. President Sarkozy made it clear, though, that the law wasn't an attack on Islam. It was about a religion. It was about women's dignity and women's liberation. And now we can see the fundamental paradox here. When I go and talk to these women, and the vast majority of them are telling me, well, for us, the full veil is a liberating tool. It allows us to step out of our home, go about our daily business, and the direct consequence of the ban is that we are effectively being put under house arrest and hence deprived of our liberty.
Because we can't go out if we don't wear it.
Absolutely.
So what do you make of it, Simon?
I just don't like laws that tell people what to do. I mean, I think there should be a minimum of such laws, period. I therefore am against bans. You've got a problem. I mean, we've now got burglars dressing up with burqas to raid jewellery stores. You've got problems. I mean, a friend of mine, a teacher, they're refusing to hand children over to women in a full burqa because they just don't know who this woman is. People turn up at the school gate and say, that's my child, give me the child. You really don't know who they are. I mean, there are real practical problems with people who will not reveal their face to you. But those are rules that cover that. They aren't.
You don't need a law.
You
don't need a law.
You don't need a blanket legislation.
No. Especially when it only affects a few hundred people. We're not talking about a widespread portion of the population here. And from my understanding of this law, it actually goes into contortions and actually trying not to mention the words Muslim, veil, or women, and yet you know exactly who the target is here. If somebody wanted to veil themselves completely because they sunburn easily, I mean, are they really being targeted? No, it's the women who are.
That's the cynicism at the heart of the text of law is like in effect, it prevents all face coverings. But in reality, you're allowed to wear any other face covering except for the full veil.
Including a beard.
Yeah.
Barry, what do you make of this?
Well, thank you for giving the chance to Ayatollah Atwan to explain his fatwa about that. No, I believe there's a huge misunderstanding about burqa, and I believe it is extremely provocative, especially in this time. How many women wearing burqa in France? 2,000 out of 5 or 6 million. So to choose this time and target these people and issues, I think this is a suppression of the freedom of choice. We are talking about secularism. You have to give the people the choice, their freedom to choose. And it is not Islamic things, it is cultural things. I'll tell you something. Today I was talking to one of those royals in the Gulf, and he said to me, we had a family conference and we decided actually to cancel our trip to France. I said, why? He said, because my sisters, they're wearing burqa, not for Islamic reason, just because they want to cover their face. So expect a lot of burqa immigration to London, simply because it is people feel free here.
That's a very good point. I mean, the police find it extremely hard to enforce. Are they going to chase impoverished women on housing estates wearing a burqa, or
Can you imagine being a police officer tasked with enforcing that?
Suppose you're a Muslim police woman who wears a burqa. I mean, when Jack Straw raised the question right back, I mean, he was saying, look, there's a woman coming to my surgery. She's sitting in front of me in a private room. I just can't, I don't know who on earth she is. She will not even reveal her face. I agree with him there. I said, I'm sorry, you can go and walk the streets, but if you want to have a conversation with me, I'd like to see your eyes, at least your mouth.
And do you think it's reasonable? I mean, because you would know better than any of us here the kind of conversation that women have about this within various Muslim communities. And it is a cultural thing, as Barry said, rather than a religious thing. Is that right?
Some women wear it for religious reasons, and they have a very strict interpretation of the Quran, evidently. Others wear it for cultural reasons. I mean, we shouldn't be looking really at the reasons why they're wearing it. It's a perfectly legitimate choice to make, and in that respect.
But do you think that initial argument that you made, that Sarkozy made, which is to say, it's demeaning to women, it liberates them, this is a good thing for us to do for the women themselves? You don't think there's anything in that at all?
No,
or do you see that's hypocrisy? Sorry to interrupt, but you see that as hypocrisy, do you? Because the state can't liberate you in that way.
I think it's a sinister state interference into religious matters, and above everything else, it's a cynical political move to desperately try and capture the far-right vote ahead of the next elections, presidential elections. Let's not forget that the whole law was set in the context of a week before the law was enforced, a national debate, yet another one, was started on the negative influence of Islam within the French Republic, with the Interior Minister coming out and saying that Muslims are a problem in France and that they want to force imams now to preach in French instead of Arabic, the language of the Quran. It's quite worrying to see where this is all going. And there I say the fact that France, of any country, which prides itself on republican values and respect of human rights, is actually opening the way to other European countries which will follow in the wake of that.
Yeah, because here Barry, it's part of the same kind of broad debate. We heard the Prime Minister this week talking about immigration to this country and saying, effectively, people have to integrate and they should speak English. I mean, he's not legislating on it, but he is saying that's how people will fit in best in this country. That's a fair point for leaders to make.
It is a very fair point. It is a must. If you are coming to this country, you have to learn its language. You have to learn its culture. You have to try to adapt. No question about that. But to interfere on my personal choice, to say you should wear this, you should wear that, this is completely against the freedom of choice. So we shouldn't provoke the people here.